Hello and welcome to the Suffen About Suffolk, a podcast where we deep dive into the county of Suffolk. Episode 2 is the second part of The Dig 2021, so if you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, go back to hear interviews with Laura Howarth, the Archaeology and Engagement Manager at Sutton Hoo, Jay Ducker, Rafe Fiennes' personal assistant on set, and the first half of our roundtable review with John Wright, Anne Hurst, Laura Bacon and Mavis the Fox. This week I talked to Charlie Haylock, the man behind Rafe's Suffolk accent, and Rachel Aldridge from Screen Suffolk, who sourced locations for the film.
Should we take a look at them then?
Right. Things like this are usually done through museums.
Yes, but with the war coming, they couldn't embark upon any new ventures.
Well, I've been on digs since I was old enough to hold a trowel. My father taught me.
Let's jump straight into the second half of our review. Last week we left the discussion a little concerned for how Hollywood the film becomes in the last 10 minutes, sacrificing Peggy Piggott's character for a love story and concealing the LGBTQ+ relationship in glances and stares. To get this made, I feel like someone would have had to have ticked all those boxes, and on the other side of that, we do get sweeping shots of the countryside, real Suffolk accents. I mean, we've briefly compared notes on Twitter about how it was incredibly emotional every time Rafe Fiennes said, like, cool the heck, and all of these Suffolk phrases. I was like, Grandad? Is that you?
Yeah, and that's down to Charlie Haylock as well, because he suffocated the script, and I think that's brilliant that they allowed him to do that, so he could say, actually, no, a Suffolk person would say this.
Yeah.
And that makes it all makes all the difference for us Suffolk people, because, like, yes, get it out there, get people listening to this. Like, if they'd said on the heart, that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Like, get that in there somewhere.
Presumably there was a big scene when there was a plague of Bishy Barnabys or something like that they edited out.
All of the words, yeah.
Yeah.
That'll be in The Dig 2, more digging.
More digging.
The helmet.
Yeah, someone comes in with their helmet.
It's shiny, look.
It's so golden. So speaking of the helmet, I'm asking everyone this. No wrong answers. Do you think that Edith Pretty and the continuation of it have done the right thing by keeping the treasures in the British Museum in London? Or do you think they should have gone to the Ipswich Museum, or even indeed then transferred to the Sutton Hoo Museum?
I think British Museum's quite good though, because then you can see all the mummies and stuff for you there.
They have a mummy in Ipswich Museum.
They do.
In their
It's a
Egypt
little baby.
section, so you
mummy.
could go and see it there. I mean, at the time, it was probably the right decision. And you know, people have break into museums, don't they, and nick rhino horns. So if it was very, very valuable, that would be a challenge maybe. But I don't see why now they can't put it all back in Sutton Hoo. People can go there just as much as they can down to the British Museum. And probably while they're at it, the British Museum might need to give a couple of other things back as well.
Just a couple.
Just a few.
Yeah, I agree about Sutton Hoo. I think it's such a special place anyway. It feels like it's a little bit cheated by not being allowed to have its own stuff. You know, when you go there, you sort of go, oh, so the real stuff isn't here. But yeah, I think it's about time, especially now.
It should be Sutton Hoo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to Ipswich, because Sutton Hoo is what it's famous for, right? It's like Ipswich. You either go to Ipswich to Sutton Hoo, then you're just in Ipswich.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I remember going to Sutton Hoo as a child and seeing the helmet and the treasures, and then reading the small print that was like, not actually the thing, go to the British Museum, lol. And it was my first brush in with, like, colonialism, as it were, where I was like, I'm sorry, what? Someone came here and took something that belonged to us and it should be here? And then you go to the British Museum and you're like, wow. And then you apply that train of thought to everything that you're looking at.
That's in there, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, we suck.
There is nothing British about the British Museum.
Absolutely nothing, except maybe the ironworks. That's not even the British Museum, that's the V&A. But then I go to the British Museum with my friends and they're like, obviously let's go to the mummy section, and I'm like, okay, but like let's also go to the East Anglia section, and I like push them in front of the helmet and I'm like, this is Suffolk, that's come from? And it is a really nice moment to be able to share that with people. But just as easily, they could hop on a train an hour out of London and come see it, and then go out and look out onto the mounds. And I think that addition with the treasures, the whole thing, would be much better. So hopefully one day they'll return. I think they've popped by and been like, oh, hey, son, who it's us, the real treasures. Anyway, bye, back to London. But hopefully one day they'll be like, we're here to stay, baby. But I don't know whose decision that would be.
Do you know what's interesting also? I used to work in America quite a lot, and I've got lots of American friends, and they're really interested in it too. So it's not just, not just people over here, not just Suffolk, because I keep thinking it's just for Suffolk. It's like, yes, our own movie. But quite a few Americans have watched it and said, oh, it's lovely, it's really great, I love the accent. A couple of people know about Mavis. They're like, oh, it's great to actually hear something because they just know Mavis with the accents. They're like, oh, that's what it's like on a human. That's actually a real accent. Like, yes, it's finally depicted in a movie on the screen.
Yeah. I honestly can't think of an example of when the Suffolk accent has been used properly in a film.
I think...
Or even outside Suffolk.
Paul Whitehouse did a good job in David Copperfield. It was a bit more Norfolk, but he did the East Anglian, and I was like, okay, fair play. He's done a good job on that. Apart from lots of other people, I think, was there a show called Coast with Stephen Fry, and Tony Slattery did a Suffolk accent with a Norfolk accent probably, and it was so pirate. It was like the most pirate accent you've ever heard. And also Yesterday, that was Lily James, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's Lily James again.
She went full pirate. She went full pirate for Yesterday. So I wonder if she's now thinking, oh shit, did that wrong.
Literally, didn't put the work in that Rafe did.
Yeah. No. Maybe she listened to Charlie and she was like, that's how you do it.
Silly Lily. Interesting that it went from basically a two-hander between Edith Pretty and Basil Brown, and it was all these sort of like long looks and interesting conversation and similar ideas and principles, and then Monica Dolan, who I love and adore and needs more everything because she's just wonderful, comes in, and then gradually it essentially becomes like a six-hander. Like it's almost like you come in halfway and it's a completely different movie to what we were just watching. Do you think that was... I don't know, what did you think about that?
I have to say I was confused when she came in, because I thought, it can't be his wife. Is it his sister? And I was really sort of, this is all wrong. This is completely jarred everything. Like you say, it suddenly turned into something else. But I absolutely loved her. Thought she was just brought it. She brought it.
She's perfect. She's a perfect actress, and she's so perfect that everyone sort of forgets about her because she's just encapsulates every role that she's in, and she's just a fabulous actress.
It did feel like there was an Act 1 and Act 2. Like Act 1 was the Diggin and the two characters, and then Act 2 was like, let's bring all the other characters in.
Yeah.
Like it suddenly sort of changed. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's tick all of those boxes as well that we have to tick, because we can't do the whole movie just about this, surely. Yeah, which is what
they could have. Yeah. But then that also illustrated, Basil Brown did get sidelined, and he, other people did come and take over, and so that's kind of how it was.
That's a very good point.
I wondered how tolerant they really would have been of him storming off and then coming back and then storming off and then coming back again and all that. Right. Probably slightly more petulant than he would have been. I don't know, but
I loved it. Very dramatic, though.
Off on his bicycle, yeah.
There he goes.
There was great debate about whether or not bicycles in 1939 had kickstands, because when he parks up, first of all, outside the house, he stands it up.
I wonder if bicycles in those days had the ability to go from disc to something. Some good tyres.
You
great. Oh, let's talk about the kid. He did some absolutely amazing crying. And British kids, can be a bit hit and miss, but he went full Henry Thomas on that. I was like, wow, okay, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. America definitely has the better child actors, whether you're going from E.T. through to like Stranger Things, but we just need to look at the Harry Potter franchise to sort of see what we've been able to.
Hogwarts history.
History. Stop. I thought he was really, really great, and I thought that he pretty much held his own between two quite established. I mean, Ray Fiennes is bloody established, and Carey Mulligan's getting there if she's not there already. Huge British actors, and he was a third character amongst them, and sort of brought the theme of, if the three of them were the themes of the past, the present, and the future, he definitely held his own within that sort of trio of theme.
Definitely.
He done ever so well.
He done ever so well. And he did make me cry.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I rate him.
Yeah. Did everybody else well up at that point? I was like, oh, he did it so well. His mum will be so proud.
I was blaring. I was definitely blaring.
So, did she die at the end? Was that the car when he was all in black and Basil Brown waved off? Was she like in the back of that car as a corpse? Or
no, she died. She died years later. Yeah.
In 1942, she died.
Yeah.
I thought that, but then there was that shot where she's doing that very sort of filmic, peaceful. She's in the boat, in the blanket, looking up at the stars, and her son's there being like, "Mom, isn't it majestic?" And she's like, "I'm dying." And then there was like a car in the distance, and he was all in black, and she wasn't there. And Basil Brown like waved to him. So I was like,
Do you know, I think we were meant to think that she died. I think that was meant to be our closure, and that was probably the Hollywood thing or the Netflix thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she didn't die until 1942, but obviously the film wasn't going to,
the
I
film
think it was
almost
definitely closure. Yeah, like a closure for us. And I think
for
it
us
was
as viewers,
symbolic of her. This is her moment in a boat.
And if she like represents the present, as it were, then her dying then means that the present as we know it comes to an end because war is here now. And they were very sort of heavy-handed with their like, look at the aeroplanes, we're on the brink of war. We're at war now, can you tell? Because the plane has crashed and we've literally seen it. We've seen the plane. It's here now because the war is here now. It's like, yes, thank
James
you.
did a shag of a pilot, so.
A pilot who was like, you must not die, I'll get my wings soon. And then the very next shot is a dead man with like wings prominently. It's like, yes, we know he's going to die because it's the war, it's very sad, but you're not going to show the war, are you? I did think it not abruptly ended, but I was like, oh, like I kind of wanted... I mean, it is just the same movie again, isn't it? When they come back after the war, they're like, well, as you were...
More digging. More digging.
Dig back up what we've already undug. But I was hoping for photographs in the credits of what they really looked like. I had to Google
when
it.
They do that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Yes. No. So the photographs were all of the cast, weren't they? Not the original pictures. So they missed a trick there. But then that would have highlighted their inaccuracies and their merging and ignoring of characters, wouldn't it? So
that's probably exactly why they didn't do it.
Yeah. Like, who's that woman holding a camera? She wasn't there.
And I think Lily James was much younger as well than, or at least she definitely looks it. I'm not quite sure how old Peggy Piggott was, but
what, Lily James is younger than Peggy Piggott?
I think so.
I thought that, I was going to say, when we were talking at the beginning about Carey's age, the one thing that did distract me was Lily's age, because I thought, Lily James, we're supposed to believe she's married to Ben Chaplin, who's 50.
Who was her father in Cinderella 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And
welcome to Hollywood, Lily.
Yeah, and the other thing that I did Google was, I had to Google whether they wore crop tops in 1930.
I thought that too, actually.
So I was like, that's a lot of waistline. Yeah. That's a lot of waistline to be showing.
Also,
for someone not at the
very
beach.
Short skirt. She was wearing a very, very short skirt for 1939, was it?
But you know what? They did wear crop tops, and they did wear those little shirts tied in the middle.
Hey.
I was like,
Funny,
wow, they're
though,
so ahead. Between the wars, so ahead of its time.
Well, they were in the roaring 20s. They were probably still, they'd just gone through a global pandemic. So everyone was like, woo, crop tops for everyone. Exactly. So maybe we'll see a resurgence in a couple of years' time of the crop top. But, we kind of have already.
Gosh,
but
I really hope not.
The croppier crop top.
Please, God, no.
But yeah, no, I was sort of taken aback there as well. I was like, Lily, I can almost see your abs. As nice as they are, we are nearly in the 40s. The acting was the type of acting that I would send clips to acting students of. Do you know what I mean? Like, just so many stares of people like subtext. Like, the acting was so loud. Do you know what I mean? Even though no one was talking, the acting was so prominent. It's like, you know exactly what I'm saying, even though I'm not saying anything. And I'm like, oh, they're so good. Look at them act.
I think that was very much highlighted with that technique, with the staringness and then talking underneath. Yeah, made it more intense, even though they weren't actually doing it there and there. Yeah.
So intense. So do you think anyone is a contender for an Academy Award, possibly more so a BAFTA?
Well, I think Ray Fiennes should win all the awards ever for being the first ever actor to be able to pull off a convincing Suffolk accent.
That is fair enough.
Charlie Haylock should get a special.
Yeah, she get like award. A mini Oscar to go with it.
I don't think dialect coaches get Oscars, and it should be.
They really should.
A campaign needs to start now. Yeah, dialect coaches to be.
Lots of, film people like stunt doubles don't get anything.
That's awful because for like superhero movies, they are the superhero.
Yeah.
So that's silly. No, I think Ray Fiennes should. I'll contact Ray Fiennes and I'll tell him if he wins the Oscar, he needs a little one with a flat cap on it to give to Charlie Haylock. Maybe put it in the dirt.
It's such an achievement, though. Like if you think about like no other actor is. I mean, he is technically from Suffolk, but still, he managed to do it. He managed to do what no other actor's done before: be a Suffolk on film.
And I think what was so great is how intense he was about it. He came onto the set and he really clearly cared about this story and this character. I'd love to talk to him about it because he wanted to get it right, and he picked the people around him because they were sort of harsh on him and they were like, "You're not doing it right, Rafe," and he was like, "Good, tell me more of that." And so was Monica Dolan.
But he worked hard for it. So like, if an actor works hard for something, that makes a lot of difference. And he wasn't doing a Russell Crowe going, "Yeah, I could do a Nottingham accent, whatever."
No worries. Yeah, literally, and I think that's really commendable. And just really. Again, lovely to see because they easily could have phoned that in. They could have been like, a movie? Yeah, I do 3 of them a year. What we doing here? Okay. But it felt crafted. It felt like everyone on board had a story to tell and they had their script and they'd gone through it with a highlighter and they had their little actor's thesaurus next to it. And it just felt like everyone had worked hard on it, you know.
There was nice, going back to the cinematography, a lot of the shots I noticed were sky. So, like, the actual land was very, very, I'm going to do it on my screen, like, low on the screen. And there's a little tiny Ray Fiennes, and then there's a huge, like, sky. I just really liked that. Nothing, like, spectacular, but it was just a nice, you felt open. It felt like you were outside because there was so much sky. Whereas some outside exterior shots will be a whole load of ground and a bit of tree, but by seeing so much sky, you really felt like you were outside for some reason.
Yeah, such a good point. I hadn't even clocked that as a thing, but you're absolutely right. The sweeping Suffolk skyline is what we're known for. And we
were talking about that all the way through, actually. Me and my husband, we were saying, gosh, it is so Suffolk. They've captured Suffolk with the shots because, you know, if you go on Instagram, anybody from Suffolk who's on Instagram who goes for a walk, you know, will take a photograph with the sea or the coast or the landscape or the Snake Marshes or whatever, and then masses of sky, and then there's the milky sunshine. I mean, those shots with the milky sun behind the cloud or the mist.
Yeah, it was lovely, wasn't it? Really, really nice.
You were just in Suffolk. The light and everything was exactly here. It couldn't have been more Suffolk, the whole thing, could it? Yeah. Really, it was beautiful.
It felt emotional for that reason.
Yeah, didn't it? Didn't it?
And I hope people who aren't from Suffolk can watch it and feel that too and think, oh, let's go there for a holiday, you know, just somewhere that isn't depicted as much.
Exactly. It's so true. It's really lovely that you said your American friends were interested in it because so often I feel all we sort of give out, because all of my American friends are like, The Crown. What was Margaret Thatcher really like?
Yeah.
And I'm like, go and watch The Dig. Like, there's stuff
Bridgerton.
outside of London. Bridgerton is American, let's be honest.
So American. It's made for American audiences.
It's American.
Absolutely.
Not a bad thing, but it's American. And, like, there's so much more to England than London. And when people think of the countryside, they think of that sort of hot fuzz, Somerset, Cornwall. But come this way. There's plenty here. Whole coastline of it.
I've got a fun fact about Stuart Piggott.
Ooh.
Fun personal fact. When I was a student, I was in a Burger King advert with him.
No way!
What? The actual man?
The actual actor, Ben Chapman.
Oh, the
who
actual
plays
actor.
Stuart
I was like,
I thought you meant the actual...
Yeah. No, Stuart Piggott wasn't an actual.
say,
No, but
career
that
change at the end of his life.
that would have actually been a way better story.
That was so
kind of wish that had been the story. I'm so sorry to disappoint
wow.
you guys.
That
No,
was-
the actor.
No, Ben Chapman
right.
is just as good.
Yeah.
What, that sounds amazing. Did you have to eat like 12 burgers in like an hour?
Did have to eat a lot of burgers, and
Did Ben Chapman have a Whopper?
I think he did order a Whopper. Actually, I think that's when they just come out. But anyway, yeah. So total distraction from the film. But I thought fun fact to throw
No,
out
that's
there.
really
That was an amazing
fun.
fact. The confusion
really
that
fun.
swept over us.
Yeah,
Oh, I know.
it's amazing.
I was just going to talk about food as well. I just love when he picked up the lemon drizzle cake. I've been wanting lemon drizzle cake for days now since watching such a tiny bit of the movie. But then I was just like, I keep thinking about them every day. And I don't have an oven. I only have a microwave and ring, so I can't make any cakes. That's just really sad.
You try and make it in a mug in the microwave. Try
I've
and
heard
see.
about this. Does it work?
I've never tried it and I daren't, but my sister's a connoisseur of mug cakes, so
I might have to do that because I've
Give it
been
a
craving
Google.
cakes so bad, and I
Yeah.
don't want to buy one.
no. You're
But
gonna
didn't
have
that
to.
lemon drizzle look amazing? It had the perfect crusty
Yes.
top, didn't it? I was really noticing. I was like, wow, they've really paid attention to the top because it's crusty.
That
Yeah.
was just me then. 'Cause I was
No, I looked at it and thought that is a cracking lemon drizzle
Yeah.
cake.
Hardcore
Now I
lemon
really
drizzle
want one now.
cake.
But all in all,
Yeah.
I enjoyed. Apart from the thrown in Hollywood checklist, that's my
Yes.
only drawback. But I don't
And
think
I-
it detracts too much for me.
And I think that's it, isn't it? Like, it's startlingly obvious where Hollywood is sort of bustled in with their elbows, but luckily it's so minimal or so right at the end where you're Googling who Stuart Piggott was in real life anyway, that it doesn't take away from, I mean, what's an exceptional first act, a very interesting second act, and just a great story overall. And genuinely, I'm not even joking, like I would watch a Dig like 1.5 where they uncover it after the war and they just tell us what happened then rather than just a couple of sentences. My last thought actually was the font. The font that they used really threw me because it looked like the kind of font that would be used in like a Fast and Furious movie or something. Did anyone else feel
It did.
it felt
Yeah,
actiony?
no. My 13-year-old son pointed that out at the end. He said that was the kind of thing that he would do on one of his little YouTube things. Yeah, I don't know why.
It felt very like, bam, the Dig coming to a cinema, yeah, rather than like what it
was more
is.
like,
But the font for the actual thing.
I thought it was more
Yeah.
Times New Roman, italic.
No, it's very sort of actiony.
You kind of expected them to have an outtakes reel or something with it,
And it came up at the
which
beginning.
might be very funny. I wonder how many.
I would love to
Yeah.
see the outtakes for this one. It's like, there you go. Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like copper plate.
Oh, it's like the
Yeah.
Bourne Ultimatum.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
He came with a trowel and a satchel.
Yeah. Literally. And he dug in the ground, and what he would find, no one knew. Is it Viking? You'll have to tune in to find out. That was so exciting. Can I just say, like, genuinely, I got such thrills when he was like, I think it's Anglo-Saxon. And they're like, it's Viking. It's like 100% going to be Viking. Maybe Roman. I don't know. Maybe it's Viking. And then at one point they were like, by Jupiter, it's Anglo-Saxon! And Ray Fiennes looks really smug, and Edith Pretty is like, well, yes, Ray Fiennes has been saying that for the entire movie. And you're just like, Anglo-Saxon! That's so exciting! It's so old. It's so old. Well done, everyone. It's so old. Like, I got into, you know, when you watch the Olympics and you become a professional, whatever they're doing, and you understand how the scores work, and you're like, what a brilliant triple twist. I understand gymnastics. I kind of got a bit like that with archaeology, where I was like, it's Anglo-Saxon, everyone. Congratulations. Well done.
He knew what he was looking at.
He did.
He did.
He knew that was Saxon.
So exciting. And just so exciting as well in the sense of like our own history. Like, as I forget, like, because you grow up and you go to Sutton Hoo and you go to Colchester Castle because it's the closest things available and often free. And then you go elsewhere and you're like, actually, we were like the capital of England at some point. Like we're on it. Like, we're so cool. Like, that's so awesome about us.
Well, that's the start of England as a nation state, isn't it? That's the first. Redwold was the first kind of king of an area, which then grew to become England. And Ipswich is the first settlement. I know Colchester claims it as its first Roman town, but Ipswich was the first permanent settlement that's then continued. So cool. we is right on it.
And King Edmund.
And King Edmund, yeah.
He should so be the patron saint of England. Sorry, St. George, but dragons, whatever. And he was a real guy.
And wasn't George Turkish as well?
Yeah, something like that.
Shove off.
Make a campaign for that. I bet there probably is, actually, Suffolk people trying to get him.
I think BBC Radio Suffolk might have mentioned that 1 or 2 times over the last 10 years with lots of campaigns. Let's get Charlie Haylock an Oscar for Dialect Coach, and then we'll turn our attention to that.
Then we got patron Saint Edmund of England. We also need to get the Sutton Hoo treasures back to Sutton Hoo. So that's 3 petitions so far. We're on it. We're going to change the world. Any last thoughts on the dig?
It would be interesting to see whether more films come here, whether people come for holidays, and whether sales of trowels go up.
Yes. Yeah, well, you know, if 50 Shades of Grey can have a BDSM revolution, maybe the dig can have an archaeology revolution.
A digging revelation.
Digging revelation.
You dig the dig.
Well, do you dig the dig? As you can probably tell, we firmly dug the dig. Do you think Charlie Haylock deserves an Oscar for teaching Rafe Fiennes the Suffolk accent? I caught up with Charlie about his time with Rafe, but just before I share that, let's go to Rachel Aldridge from Screen Suffolk. So I'm joined now by Rachel from Screen Suffolk. Thank you so much for coming on.
That's all right. Lovely to be here.
So can you tell us a bit about Screen Suffolk and what it is that you do?
Yeah, so Screen Suffolk is an organisation that works on behalf of all the councils, district councils and borough councils in Suffolk to facilitate and permit filming across the whole of Suffolk. So if you're a filmmaker or a photographer and you need to close a road or film on a beach or film in one of our parks, you just contact us and we sort that out for you. Yeah,
amazing.
And permit it.
Yeah. So did Netflix get in touch with you, or did you sort of make yourselves aware to Netflix?
Well, we've had the story for the dig. Well, the book was obviously written quite a number of years ago, but the script has been around for quite a number of years now. So it's always been on our radar, and I suppose it's about 2 years ago that a location scout started contacting us, and they were looking for things like Edith Pretty's house in Suffolk, or they were looking for little bits, and we sort of gave them a few pointers, and then it sort of all went quiet again, and then it sort of all picked up again sort of the summer of 2019, when they said yes, they would definitely wanted to come to Suffolk for a week, and we helped them find certain locations in Suffolk that they used.
Nice. So I visited Sutton Hoo back in November, during the sort of mini semi-lockdown when we were still allowed to sort of do some stuff. And from what I remember, they don't actually use Edith Pretty's real house, do they? Or do they?
No, they don't. No, they couldn't actually film at all at Sutton Hoo because it's open to visitors, and also you can't really film around the mounds, and obviously you can't dig it up. So they filmed the main dig parts of the film and Edith Pretty's house were all in Surrey, and the studio was Surrey as well. So yeah, so they did a week's filming in Suffolk where they got all their establishing shots, where they really they did the first week of filming in Suffolk, so that they could really get the look of the film nailed down before they went on to do any other filming. So they had it in their minds that they wanted the big skies, the marsh to run all the way through the film, which it does, doesn't it? It looks so beautiful.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous. I had no idea that, this place I've lived all my life, it looks so magical on film. And you get really proud.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's amazing.
So the ferry that he rides to get to Edith Pretty's house at the beginning of the movie, was that in Suffolk then?
That is Butley Ferry. And it's one, actually there's a few, something else I do, which is something that no one knows probably, is I'm also a ferry woman for the Walberswick Southwold ferry. So I'm a rower. I row people across that stretch of water. So I know there are a few rowing boat ferries in Suffolk, and Butley is one of them, and there's one in the Walberswick Southwold one, there's Bordsey as well. So yeah, there's a few around that cover small stretches of water.
Oh, amazing. And it wasn't ever a possibility that you were going to don a beard and be the sort of ferryman for Ralph Fiennes?
No.
That's a shame.
The people who are on film rowing the ferry are actually the Butley ferry man and his wife.
Oh.
And they donned the costumes and got dressed up and did that. So, which is so lovely, because actually really nice. You can't just let anyone row one of those boats across the river, because you actually kind of have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You can't just let an actor do
it. No matter, and actors are notorious for sort of putting things on their CV that they definitely cannot do in real life. So yeah, there could have been an accident there.
Yeah. I can row, yes.
Yeah, sure. Put me on. Yeah, great. And then suddenly you're dragging people out of the river. Yeah, that's fair. So what other locations in Suffolk were used specifically? Do you know them off by heart?
I know a few. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I'd say the most recognisable Suffolk location is probably Boyton Marsh, which is where all the scenes with that brick structure were filmed. And I'd say that's the most recognisable. That's an RSPB site.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's a lovely site if you ever want to go for a walk or anything. It's beautiful. You've got lovely footpaths around by the water. But that's where they filmed a large part of the Suffolk filming, which we pointed them in their direction, but the RSPB then sort of managed that themselves, because they know all about looking after wildlife and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We also helped them with some filming at Snape Maltings. There's a scene where a boat goes along the river, and we helped them with that. And we also they unit based and put all their technical vehicles at Snape Maltings itself for a day. So that was really exciting. And they filmed on Aldridge Beach.
Wow.
And they did a bit at Shingle Street with Ralph Fiennes riding his bike. Yeah, so all over the place. And they were only here for a week, but there is so much of it in the film. That's what's so lovely. I was going to
say, yeah, they crammed so much of it in. When you consider how long filming takes, that's crazy that they were only here a week.
Yeah.
So does that mean you were on set sort of at the time when they were?
We were on set, myself and my job share Jim, we were on set for the Snape Maltings Aldridge Beach Shingle Street Day. Yeah. Which was so exciting. It's so great. It's always exciting.
It's fun, isn't it? There's something magical about a film set where you're just like, oh.
And this was pre-COVID, so it was September 2019, so it was all very relaxed. Yeah, so it's really great. It's always lovely to have people visit Suffolk to film. It's just always so lovely, and people always love coming here as well, which is great.
That's really good. Yeah.
But yeah, we've had a busy start to the year, and there's people, we have got more things filming. We've got another Suffolk story filming later on in the year, which I can't say too much about.
Yeah. That's very exciting.
So there is going to be more Suffolk on the screen, that's for sure.
Nice. So did you enjoy The Dig? I assume you've watched it.
Loved it. Yeah, absolutely loved it. I watched it with my kids, and it just really, I've taken him to Sutton Hoo so many times, and it's quite abstract, isn't it? Just looking at those mounds. And I've taken them to the British Museum to see all the, masks and treasures, but it's just so. It really sort of brought the whole story to life for them, and I think it's done that for so many people, and I think people weren't completely aware of it outside of Suffolk. I think everyone in Suffolk knows the story, but outside of Suffolk, and so I think it's going to have a real impact on the tourist industry here as well.
Yeah,
people wanting to come and visit and visit Suffolk itself.
Absolutely, and there's so much here tourist-wise that come out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of asking everyone this. Do you think the treasures should have been given to the British Museum, or do you think they should have stayed in Suffolk?
Oh,
I know.
I do you know what? I think they should have gone to the British Museum, although that's probably controversial, isn't it? maybe they should have gone to the Ipswich Museum, but I do think about the British Museum. The most amount of people then get to see them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like it for that reason. And when I go to the British Museum, I just find it so exciting to go and see that and know that's from our little part of Suffolk.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel the same. Whenever I'm with someone, I drag them specifically to that part to be like, look what we found.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, and the visitor centre at Sutton Hoo is amazing. They've done, even though they haven't got the original treasures there, you feel like they have, don't you, when you go there?
Yeah, definitely. And they've definitely have the real mounds. So, and that's really the more magical part.
Yeah.
So initially, I was contacted by Ray Fiennes by the phone in mid-July 2019, and he'd seen my dialect tour of the UK on Charlie Haylock YouTube, showing all the different mouth and lip movements each of the dialects that I was doing, including Suffolk. And because it's more important to look at mouth movements when you're trying to do a dialect than listening. Ear will fine-tune it, but if you get the lip movements right, you're 80% sure of getting a dialect. And every dialect has different lip movements, as he saw on the YouTube, right? Then he saw me doing the difference between East and West Suffolk and the different lip movements, and he thought, he's the boy I want for teaching him to do a Suffolk dialect. And then they contacted me, agreed, and as soon as I agreed, 2 days later, I received the script, which I read, and then I suffocated. Now, that meant rewriting it. This was just the Suffolk lines, not the other ones. And I read it phonetically, and I slipped in a few Suffolk phrases and dialect words. There's no good putting things in like slightly on the her, because outside East Anglia, nobody would understand that. Bearing in mind, the film is being shown in America, Canada, worldwide, right? Okay, then it's no good saying there's, when they walked across the field early summer morning, there's a heavy dag today, a heavy dew, because once again it wouldn't be understood. But where I could, I slipped in a few Suffolk dialect words. So when Mrs. Pretty is down in the dig, and it's a bit unstable, Basil Brown says, "You mustn't be down there, Mrs. Pretty." Well, I was able to slip in, "You mayn't be down there, Mrs. Pretty." And everybody will know what that meant. And then changing the grammar, so like we're now leaving rather than we're leaving now, and come you here, and do you take care of her. So I could slip in a Suffolk way of saying it, which made the accent more authentic for the film, but people would still understand it. Early August, I met Rafe at Colchester Station, and then I realised for the first time it was for real. Right, I actually saw the bloke.
Yeah.
And then we went from the Keith Theatre to Sudbury, and we had quite a number of training sessions there. Now, he was there for the whole day. He was there for an 8-hour session, and the next time another 8-hour session. So it wasn't just turning up for half an hour. And we went through the script. We then went out into the community, because he decided that he wanted to be in a Suffolk dialect, non-stop, offset, on-set, weekends away, until the end of filming. He was going to stay in a Suffolk dialect non-stop. So we went out into Cass so he could order up his bacon sandwich. Have a bacon sandwich, please, dear. And so one lady recognised him, so he autographed the menu. We then went into some Suffolk pubs in the tap room and the public bar, so we could join in with the locals in conversation. So not only could he get the sound right for the Suffolk dialect, but also the rhythm. And this is most important. It's no good sound in Suffolk if you haven't got the rhythm and if you haven't got those pauses. Because the big thing about the Suffolk dialect is, one, it's not too fast, and secondly, when we're talking, there are lots and lots of pauses. And that came through in the film, because there's a line there which says, Mrs. Pretty has just said that she was also involved in an archaeological dig when she was a young girl, just old enough to hold a trowel. And then Basil Brown looks at her and says, according to the script, that speaks, doesn't it, the past? And I say to Rafe, right, we've got to put a pause in there. Must put a pause in there, because a Suffolk person wouldn't say it like that. So it comes out, it speaks, doesn't it? The past. Now, whilst that gap and that pause, Mrs. Pretty is thinking, what speaks? Everybody watching the film thinks, what speaks?
Yeah.
And as soon as people have thought that, then you've brought people in. It goes back to our storytelling times from Beowulf to the present day. Those pauses means that you're bringing the audience in, you're bringing the listener in and the viewer into your storytelling and conversation, and they feel part of it. And that is essential when portraying a Suffolk dialect. This is pre-filming, so filming didn't start until mid-September. But early in September, I then ran 2 workshops, Suffolk dialect workshops, for all the other Suffolk actors. Did this in a London dance studio because I insisted on mirrors. When I was working with Rafe at the Key Theatre, we had mirrors, right? Because then he could copy my lip movements, look in the mirror and copy my lip movements. And by getting my lip movements right, he was getting the accent right.
Yeah.
So therefore, we had this here dance studio in London, and I ran two workshops. Rafe turned up to one of them, and there was Monica Dolan, who played Mrs. Maybrowen, Eddie Piercy, who played Mrs. Lyons, Bronwyn James, who played Mrs. Pretty's maid, Joe Hurst, who was John Jacobs, and James Dryden, who was Mr. Spooner. And I'd suffocated all their scripts and used the mirrors so they could get the copy the lip movements right. And at the end of each workshop, all the actors got their smartphones out and filmed me reciting all their lines.
Oh, wow.
So when they went home, right, not only could they hear me,
Yeah.
but also see my lip movements, so they could carry on practicing their lines and get the accent right. Now, some were struggling. So Joe Hurst, who played John Jacobs, right, he came all the way from South Wales to spend a day with me in Albury. So he came down on the Saturday, stayed Saturday night with a mate of his. Then Sunday, I met him, and then we went to Snape Sunday Market, so we could then walk amongst Suffolk people, listen to the Suffolk dialect. I introduced him to people so he could get into the swing of it, just to get the dialect right. And all he had was one line in the whole of the film. But he wanted to get it right.
Yeah.
Because I told him right from the word start. My first words to Rafe, well, apart from hello, was, you know, I've got my work cut out, didn't you? And he looked at me, why? I said, because all you actors, when you try and do a Suffolk accent, you end up like West Country pirates.
Yes.
So he said, right. So that was the first. And I told all the actors that I do not want to hear West Country. I don't want to hear pirates. Right? Ellie Piercy, she came with me one Monday afternoon to the Blacksall ship. That's near Snape, for their round-the-room busking afternoon, and one of the locals, Daphne, sat with Ellie and they went through her lines together so she could actually hear an old Suffolk lady speaking her lines, not just me. And then Bronwyn James came back from Yorkshire for a second workshop. They all knew they mustn't sound like West Country pirates.
Yeah.
I'd set a high standard and they all responded to that.
That's so good.
Continued with Ray Fiennes with his dialect training, and I also took him to the Blacksaw ship on a busking afternoon, Monday, and he joined in. We talked to a number of the locals, and he sang a couple of songs. He can hold a good tune, you know. Oh, yes, he can. And he enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed himself. Then the filming started in mid-September. Now, my contract was now coming to an end. I'd trained Rafe all that time up to filming, and I'd trained all the other actors. So I was going to be on set for something like the first week and see everything was going right and then go home. But every day they kept on tweaking the scripts. So we had to re-suffocate them, and then you had to relearn the script. Right, so we spent all that time learning that, and now they were tweaking it.
Mm-hmm.
So for consistency, Rafe then went to the producer and said, look, because this script is being tweaked all the time, I need Charlie Haylock on board all the time. Because they said, yes, we agree. And so I then carried on right the way through filming until it finished.
Amazing.
I know. And so I had to duck and dive a bit. Now, the initial filming was done in Suffolk, but we couldn't film at Sutton Hoo because, one, it was National Trust. The mounds had already been dug into, so we couldn't dig into them anymore. And also, there was nothing there really. The mounds aren't that big anymore because of the tank training that after the war, or before the war. So we went into Surrey, and we did a lot of filming in Surrey. There was a big field there where they had made these mounds, and so they recreated Sutton Hoo and everything else. So there's quite a bit of travelling down to Surrey as well.
Yeah.
So we carried on. Then, after every take, I had to make notes and then report to the script supervisor. Now, they'd make her notes, so it could be 15, 20 takes, sometimes even more. So you're making take after take after take after take. So when it came to editing at the end, if the director turned around and said, right, I want that take there, the script supervisor, oh no, they didn't do the accent very well there. They did it very well there, and so they could pick a scene where they got the accent right.
Oh, wow.
But, oh yeah. But then, right, as soon as I walked up to the script supervisor and said that accent was absolutely superb on that take, the director had already whipped out, going, oh, that was absolutely beautiful, that was absolutely marvellous. He was an Australian, by the way. It was marvellous, that was absolutely great, best one yet. And we very soon twigged that when they got the accent right, the director was saying it was the best acted.
Amazing.
Because they got the rhythm of Suffolk right, they got the way it was pronounced right, and it's, once again, it's the storytelling. And so, yeah. But Rafe, as he came out of every set, the first person he'd look for was me. Right, and I was sat in strategic positions, and he knew where I was. So the first person who'd come out was me. Now, rather than running up and towards one another, we quickly worked out a bit of a sign language. So a thumbs up was obvious. I'd do a beckoning towards me. So we'd then meet up, go through it, tell him where he went wrong, get it right again. And then there was the puckering of the lips. So if he came out to get because right, West Country, they talk down the bottom of the throat. So you talk down here. You got to talk down here, down the bottom of the throat. Whereas Suffolk talk at the front of the mouth, right at the front of the mouth.
Yeah.
And so we say farm rather than farm, and barn rather than barn. Right. So we got to now to say words like here and dear and Rowand and Mr. Brown. You actually push your lips out, like blowing a kiss to one another. So if he got those sounds wrong, when he came out of the set, I would look at him and I'd just pucker my lips. And, well, what what he did. He puckered his lips back. It looked as if we were blowing kisses to one another. On one occasion, when he came out, I held up a big notice, 9.7. And Kerry Mulligan, who was playing Mrs. Pretty, they both saw it and they both laughed. The next take, I'm holding up 9.9. And Kerry Mulligan, as Mrs. Pretty, turned around to Basil Brown and said, "You're improving, Brown." Which was, yes, that was rather good. So this went on, and I'd be on the set fairly early in the morning, sometimes at 6 o'clock in the morning, to make sure I was available for Rafe so we could spend time together before he went on the film set. Then in between takes, he and I would get together, go over the lines. He was seeking perfection, he really was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during filming, well, when I first met Rafe, he was an actor who was going to play Basil Brown. By the time we were filming, he was Basil Brown. And as a result, I never called him Rafe anymore, I called him Basil. On set, off set, so I could help him stay in character. That was my little way of helping him. Oh, right. What he did to become Basil Brown, he went to the British Museum and he saw the treasure there. He also held and read Basil Brown's notebooks so he could get into his mindset. He then, on the next occasion we met at the Keith Theatre, Sudbury, he cycled from Colchester to got a train, then cycled from Colchester to Sudbury in his Basil Brown gear, riding not a racing bike but the old-fashioned postman's bike like Basil Brown had. He then, we had an 8-hour session, right? He then stayed at the Mill Hotel, and then he cycled from Sudbury to Woodbridge, and then cycled from Sutton Hoo to Rickinghall and back like Basil Brown had done.
Oh my gosh.
He was going to behave like Basil Brown. He went to Rickinghall so he could meet people who knew Basil Brown, so he could find out about the character. He went to Sutton Hoo several times to look at footages and archives so he could dress and become Basil Brown. He went on an archaeological dig, right, so he knew what it was like to be in an archaeological. So when he was being filmed, he wasn't being ham-fisted. He was doing it properly and correctly.
Yeah.
So he did all that, right, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
So you can see he had become the character, and that's why I called him Basil. Now, Monica Dolan, as Mrs. Brown, she cracked the Suffolk dialect as well. And you'll notice during the film that when they speak to one another, they speak in a broader dialect than when they speak to the toffs. In those days, when you spoke to the toffs, like Lord of the Manor, you then put on a bit of a voice that's not so broad. Well, they did that as well in the film. And Basil Brown, or Ray Fiennes and I, we practiced that. So when he was talking to Mrs. Pretty, it weren't so broad, but when he was talking to May Brown, it was the normal Suffolk dialect. And also, they were told, when the script finishes, carry on ad-libbing, because the director didn't want to say cut immediately afterwards. He wanted to run a while, and so you had continuity rather than all of a sudden cuts. And some of the ad-libbing, right, was so good that it's in the film. So there's a lot of unscripted ad-libbing in the film. But there was one that didn't get through, and that was when May Brown turned up one night with the shirts, and Basil was surprised, and the script finishes, and he said, in a very suggestive way, "Sure you won't stay the night, May?" To which she replied, "We ain't got time for that, you wait till you get home." I know, because they were in the part, they could do that. That's how good they'd become. And it was, and Monica Dolan also said, because she was being interviewed on BBC Radio Suffolk, and they were complimenting her on the dialect and getting it right, and she said something like, it would be disrespectful to Suffolk people if we didn't. And one time I went up to Monica, there was one word she couldn't get right. There was one word she couldn't get right. And I kept on going up, and I said, "I'm sorry to be a bit of a perfectionist, Well, she had turned around to me, she said, "What's wrong with perfection?" And that little comment, that gave me the confidence to keep on going in there and say, that weren't right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very, very helpful. Ray Fiennes gave me a lovely, lovely quote. I approached Charlie Haylock as I had watched some YouTube recordings of his talks on the history of spoken English. His ear for dialect is extraordinary. I hoped he'd be able to guide me to the right accent for Basil Brown, the famous Suffolk-born archaeologist who I was playing. Charlie is a perfectionist and would correct me on anything that felt inaccurate. The challenge being especially to avoid sounding West Country. His pleasure when we, the Suffolk characters, got it right was tangible. I loved that it was a matter of pride for Charlie that he wanted us to speak the Suffolk dialect accurately. Charlie's pleasure in the work made it one of the most fulfilling experiences. Can't get better than that, can you?
No, that's amazing.
And then Susanna Linton, she was the script supervisor. Now, I'd worked with actors before on stage, but never on a film set.
Mm-hmm.
Completely new to me. The best, and this is Susanna Linton, the script supervisor, the best dialect coach is one who, through working with the technique and understanding of the roots of a dialect, allows an actor to find and play the inner truth of his character. The dialect and the dialogue become as one with the natural physicality and thought process and just the simple being of the character. Charlie absolutely achieved this with Rafe. Having never worked on the film set, Charlie's approach was fresh and insightful. The result of a mind-boggling knowledge of Suffolk history, detailed note-taking on every take of every shot that Rafe was speaking in was impressive. Charlie's gentle manner and dedicated approach to working with the other actors was, I know, much appreciated by them. For myself, it was always fascinating to learn the stories about how the Suffolk dialect originated and evolved, an endearing and hard-working presence on set, and offset the humorous and expansive personality in the pub. There you go.
Wow. I'm asking everyone this, so this is just a sort of side question. Really, the Sutton Hoo treasures, do you believe they should have gone to the British Museum or to the Ipswich Museum, or should they now go back to Sutton Hoo?
As Mrs. Pretty said, more people will see it at the British Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with Mrs. Pretty.
Mm-hmm. Make sure to tune in next week where we'll be starting our Suffolk historical timeline. I'll be talking to Westow, Ipswich Museum and Charlie Haylock once more, among others, as we open the first page of English history with the Anglo-Saxons. Make sure to subscribe on your favourite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode, and follow us on YouTube for more content. And if you enjoy the podcast, you can head to co-fi.com and show your support for the price of a cup of coffee. All links are in the description. For now, thanks for listening. Mind how you go.